Hi, this is Adam Herman. I've just had the pleasure of joining the Orlando Law Group, and this is a little video about myself.
How did you get into being a lawyer, and why did you decide to become one?
Well, I graduated from the University of Miami, and in order to become a lawyer, you generally take the LSATs. That's a test that's designed to measure your capability for law school. I took the LSATs the first year they had converted it, and I thought it was a really bad score. So I said, well, maybe I'm not cut out to be a lawyer. And I went ahead and I went about my life at that point, and I ended up being on a cruise ship. About 5 years into it, I got a phone call from my mother, and she said, basically, is this what you're going to do for the rest of your life? Are you going to travel around? Or are you going to get a career? I said, well, I guess I'm going to get a career. And I ended up applying to law school. And it turns out that the score that I had on the LSAT, after it was curved and a number of cycles had occurred where people had taken the test, it actually was a much better score than what I thought it was. So lo and behold, I applied, was admitted, and I became a lawyer.
What do you think makes you great at being a lawyer?
I don't know if I'm great at being a lawyer, but one of the things that makes a good lawyer is issue spotting. The biggest thing, the biggest skill that a lawyer can have is to spot issues that are favorable, spot issues that may be a problem in a particular lawsuit. If one can spot an issue, one can be an effective lawyer.
What is one of the most gratifying things about working in the field of law?
Gratifying in the sense that a lot of lawyers today, they do not want to try cases. There's a fear. One of the most gratifying things about being a lawyer is those moments that you have when you do try a case and you're faced with a jury and you're connecting with that jury. It's being a trial attorney or a litigator is a lot like being a performer. You're performing for the jury. Your audience is 6 people. And when you get that connection and you realize that what you've said has touched one of the 6, it's, I can only imagine it's like somebody being on stage who connects with the audience.
What is one thing you've learned through your time as an attorney that you feel other attorneys overlook or perhaps the public doesn't understand?
With regards to attorneys, you find this with young attorneys. They fail to appreciate how the pieces fit together. As I stated, a lot of attorneys don't go to trial anymore. So while they go through the motions, you're supposed to take a deposition. You're supposed to do what's called written discovery. But they don't exactly know how that's going to fit in at the end. You need to get to the courtroom to see how all those little pieces of evidence that you've collected throughout the course of the case, how they're going to fit together. And most of the young attorneys don't do that. Another thing is the attorneys, they believe that in order to be an effective advocate, they need to be mean. They need to be disrespectful. They confuse being a strong advocate with being tough. And that's just not the case. You can communicate your position to opposing counsel with civility and still effectively represent your client. With regards to the public, the biggest misconception of the public is that lawyers are dishonest, so to speak. They'll say or do anything, and that's just not the case. As a lawyer, we're bound by ethical considerations. We're bound by a code known as the professional ethics. We're bound by candor to the court. We cannot set forth a position to a judge that we know to be wrong. We cannot foster somebody to not tell the truth in court. It's our obligation, and most attorneys that I know take it seriously. Also, the clients, they don't realize that they are the decision makers. We are just merely giving them advice. We give them recommendations. We tell them what we think might happen, but ultimately it's for the client to make the decision. The client is the one in control. It's up to them to decide what they want to do. We don't make the decision for the client.
What is one pitfall you would tell potential clients about, as well as how they can avoid it or handle said pitfall?
It doesn't matter if you are a doctor, an architect, an engineer, a contractor. Put it in writing. So many cases come down to the client saying, but I was told this, but yet it's nowhere in the record. If you're a contractor, make sure that you get a change order. Make sure it's signed by the architect or signed by the owner. If you're a doctor and you make a recommendation, make sure it's in the medical record. If you're a lawyer and you provide advice, make sure you document it in your notes. The single biggest issue I see is lack of documentation.
You've recently transitioned here to the Orlando Law Group. Tell me a little bit about why you're excited for that transition.
My previous practice was what is known in the industry as insurance defense. And insurance defense, your clients are the individual, but you're paid by the insurance company. That dynamic, known as a tripartite relationship, it doesn't foster a sense of trust between the client and the attorney. The attorney is generally chosen by the insurance company. The client has not had any interaction with the attorney before the case. And the client mistakenly believes that the attorney is working for the insurance company, when in actuality, the attorney is the attorney for the client. No different than if the client walked in off the street and hired the attorney himself. Unfortunately, what ends up happening is you proceed through the case. Maybe you get a great result for the client, and that's usually the last time you're going to see that client. The Orlando Law Group affords me the opportunity to build a relationship with clients. I may see the client in this litigation. I may see the client again a year from now in a different aspect. Maybe they need assistance with closing, or maybe they need assistance with different type of litigation. You build a relationship, and that relationship just doesn't exist in the insurance defense world.
What is one job you worked before you became a lawyer, and how does it inform how you do your job today?
I am a second career lawyer. And by that, I mean, before I went to law school, I had a number of jobs. I was a maitre d'. I worked on a cruise ship. I drove what you might call it as a FedEx type of truck in Manhattan. I drove in the garment district in New York City. The cruise ship is probably the one job that best prepared me for the law. And by that, I mean, when you're dealing with so many different nationalities and so many people of different backgrounds, you start to realize that really everybody is just the same. They all want the same. We all want the same thing. Maybe we speak a different language, but everybody wants the same. You also you begin to appreciate that what you might, you look at somebody and say, well, they're on a cruise ship and they don't speak English really well. And are they educated? And then you go to find out that person speaks 4 languages. And the funniest story I can give is, I remember working on the cruise ship, and I guess this person couldn't understand the waiter, and they were complaining about it. And that was exactly the response I had to give this person in a nice manner, was that they had to understand that this person who was communicating with you, English was your first language, English was his fourth language. He had 3 other languages that he knew. So this wasn't somebody who was just an uneducated man. This was a very educated man who speaks 4 other languages. And I think people tend to overlook that. And being on a cruise ship allowed me to appreciate that.
You graduated with a degree in psychology. How does that enhance how you work as an attorney?
I think it all feeds the job, the previous jobs, the practicing law later in life, the psychology degree. It allows me to relate to people. And ultimately, whether you're a doctor, a lawyer, or a waiter, your job is to relate to people. There's really no difference between a lawyer and a waiter in the sense that you want to make the person feel comfortable. You want the person to trust you. Yes, the stakes may be higher as being a lawyer than, say, a waiter, but ultimately you want to instill a sense of comfort in them that they can trust that they're going to have a pleasant experience.
You work in professional liability. What are some common ways a business owner can insulate themselves to avoid liability?
The biggest problem I see is when professionals, whoever it might be, they don't document their file. They don't document what they're telling somebody. And ultimately, what ends up happening is you have one person saying one thing, another person saying he told me something else, and ultimately it becomes very difficult to prove in a courtroom. If you document, you're in a much better position. Thank you for watching. I hope the video provided a little insight into who I am. And if you have any litigation needs, please feel free to give me a call.